You know, we're very fortunate because we have Dylan, myself, Joe, Kevin, and now Wes going out to client parcels. And together we'll go to over 300 parcels this year around the country. But that being said, we're going to 300 parcels. And there's a lot of deer hunting parcels out there. We get a lot of inquiries. And unfortunately, we can't fit everyone in. And so whether we can't fit anyone in, and then we also charge a large fee. We don't charge as much as some in the industry because we want to be efficient with our travel. Typically, for example, on mine, I'm going to clients from December through September. And unless I'm working out of the house, which is just 2 or 3 months, then I'm going to a city and I'm going out from there, and I'll travel up to an hour and a half one way, and then I'm going back to the same hotel room. Sometimes in the past, I'd go to as many in Michigan. I've been to 13 clients in 15 days, so I take 2 days off. My typical schedule for quite a few years was 5 clients, day off on Sunday, and then go to 5 clients. And I'd have that day off in between. Sometimes I'd switch to a different hotel room 3 or 4 hours away in a different city. But I'd have a Michigan run, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Minnesota, sometimes down southern Indiana, southern Illinois, northern Kentucky when I went down to the ATA out of there. But bottom line is, and then I flew to a lot. I've flown as many as 7 or 8 in 1 year, 9 I think in 1 year. And I don't do that anymore. So we all go out to clients, but it costs a lot. Not all of you can afford it. And that's why I like bringing all the free information to you. And I'm going to go through right here the things that I look at when I go to a client parcel. And I've been to around 1,500 clients in 26 states. Dylan's been to 300. And Joe and Kevin have been to over probably a couple hundred each, together. Wes is just starting to go, so he's already been to some this year. And the bottom line is, we have this experience. We want to bring it to you, and we'll bring it to you free. We'll at least give you as much information as we can in this short video and help you out. Kind of a step in between for those who can't afford to have us come out to the property, but want a little bit more in depth, is I have my How to Design Your Whitetail Property web class. That's the first one I came out with in 2020. It's been highly popular, and we sell a lot of those, but it's a great sales item right now because people will buy that. And on your second, third, fourth web class, we have other web classes too, you get 20% off. But really go through that web class methodically. And Dylan, I think it's 18 videos. Does that sound right?
I can't remember which one for the
first one, the web class.
Yeah, I think
it's like 18, right around there. And where the food plot one, I think is closer to 30. We have a lot in the food plot one. A little bit bigger one. But bottom line is, in the design web class, it'll help you design your whitetail parcel and really break it down. And so I'm going to go through some of the structure of that. And first and foremost, on your land, when we meet with a client in the morning, I want to know, because this is private land we're dealing with, you want to have food plots. If you don't have food plots on private land, you can never make up for a food plot, a good food plot, with just cutting and habitat on your property. Don't ever believe that or fall victim to that. Because someone down the road 2 miles away will have a great food plot program, and they're going to take all the deer away from you. Because a mature buck especially will go find that food, and he'll take it. And he'll find it, and if it's done right, he's going to leave your land. You're not going to see him much, maybe in the middle of the night. And so it's really important to have a quality food plot on private land, and that's imperative. But that same food plot can kill you. It can hurt your land. It can destroy your land, because if you don't put it in the right location, then when you get on and off your parcel, you're going to spook deer from it. Now you're inviting all these deer to a beautiful food plot, highly attractive to your land, only to spook them off. That is very, very bad. You educate more deer than if you had the food plot in the first place, and you're better off not having the food plot if that's how you're going to hunt. You're better off just going out and sitting on your property, 100 acres, 30 acres, 200, whatever it is, just sitting out there in a thick cover funnel and hoping a buck comes through during a rut or is pushed from your neighbors in some way. Bottom line is, you have to do it right. So the reason I have food/access is food plots on your land, and the availability of food plots determines where your access can go, and your access that's available determines where your food plot goes. They come hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. You can't access your food plots. So your food, when we're sitting down with the client first, it's not just where food's going to be located, it's how much food can you plant? How much time do you have? We explore, what do they do for a living? How much free time do they have? Are they going to pay someone to plant it, like Brandon from First Choice Food Plots? Or are they going to do it on their own? We recommend we give a lot of work to Brandon, because some people just don't have the time. They have more money. But then there's people that have less money, more time. Do you have an ATV? Do you have an ATV sprayer? Do you have a cultipacker like the Packer Max that we recommend? Do you have a handheld spreader, or do you have an ATV spreader, or do you have a tractor spreader? Do you have a grain drill? Those are all questions to be explored to determine what you should plant. In general, very general, I hate giving percentages, I hate giving total acres, but let's just say on the average 40-acre parcel, you'd want somewhere between 1.5 and 4 acres of food. On the average 100-acre parcel, you're probably around 5, 6, 7 acres in food. And if you have 300 acres, then you could be anywhere. Huge range from 8 acres to 20 acres. Who knows? Depends on what you plant, what your resources are, equipment. And I know that's very loose, but we go to see properties in wooded areas that hardly have any deer, to ag areas that have a lot of deer. And in those wooded areas, you might actually need more food than in the ag areas that have 3 times as many deer, because there's no other quality food available when you have a complement of ag land around you, for example, or other people with food plots. Then deer have places to feed at night too, and they don't just sit there and camp out on your land and eat it all out. But we need to determine, it's one thing to determine what planting resources you have. That determines what you can plant, your soil types, what your neighbors are planting, but then most importantly, where do those food plots actually go in the first place? And that starts to establish the framework of your hunting land, no more or no different than where's the kitchen go in a house that you're designing. You have to figure that out. Where's the driveway going to go? Where's the garage? Garage leads to the kitchen, laundry room, whatever it might be. You have to determine those things. No different than you're looking at a hunting property. We got to figure out where that food goes. Once we figure out that food screened on the side, we'll talk about how to screen it. Could be that it's a temporary screen, like our deer fence we sell through Pure Wildlife Blends, or it's a permanent, more like switchgrass, conifers, miscanthus grass, whatever it might be. But you have that screening, that determines where does bed and fawns bed. That food source does. They'll want to bed close to that. The bucks will not bed between the does, fawns, and that food source. Very, very rarely. Only in extreme cases. So you have the food, does, fawns, and then you have bucks, and then mature bucks if there's room left over. We call that depth of cover. So we're looking at that. Okay, there's food going here. That means does go here. And you don't want to have food scattered throughout your entire property. You want to pull them to one side or two sides so you have that depth. Because you can have a great buck bedding area, and if you stick a food source in, even a 1/4 acre, 1/8 of an acre, just a little kill plot, you'll displace buck bedding. That buck might not want to live within 150, 200 yards of any food plot. The bigger the food plot, the further he'll bed away. So we have to figure that all in to your access to food sources, where does bed, and then that determines where bucks bed. Once we have that, we can figure out what the travel is going to be between. Are there swamp edges? Are there cut lines? Are there inside corners of fields? Are there wetland areas where there's islands that will get deer from one side to another? All those funnels between food sources and bedding area, then we can look at and say, you know what? This is awesome between these movements. We can say, so for a travel corridor, we can say, well, we're going to take a DR brush trimmer, we're going to connect these dots because it's through thick brush, thick grass. Or this is an area where it's open, big timber, and part of a timber plan is we're harvesting the timber, we're creating those bedding areas, we're enhancing the buck bedding area locations, we're enhancing the doe bedding. Once all that timber is removed, now we can create deer trails to connect from food to bedding areas, but we're going to do it in those natural funnels that are already on the land. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel or force deer to move in locations they wouldn't otherwise move, like straight up and down a cliff or straight through obviously a 6-foot deep swamp or something where we're not going to expect them to swim through there every day. We determine the movement, we determine that travel in between, we enhance buck bedding, doe bedding, just getting sunlight to the ground, diversification, making sure there's enough daytime browse. Then once we have all that done, we can look at, okay, we have the movement, we have the bedding, the feeding, we're walking around these areas, or we're going in the middle and then it's all off to the sides, like in case of a cabin that's in the middle of a parcel. So we have the movement, we have the bedding, we have the food, we have the access, so we're not spooking deer. That should total on a 40-acre parcel at least 50% of the land. That includes all that movement, everything together. It's all together too. And on a larger parcel like 100 acres, we call that parcel efficiency. Then you want on that parcel at least 60, 70% of the land out of 100 acres as all deer all the time. And then that outside timber where you're accessing might be more open. You're blowing your scent into it. It's a non-deer area. Once we have that movement, now we can add sweeteners. Meaning we want a mock scrape at every stand location. That determines exactly where a buck will cruise by a stand. And then we want water holes. If it's a dry property with a lot of hills, 300-400 feet in elevation, it's 40 acres, you might want 3 to 4 water holes. If it's a flat 40 and it's dry, you might have 2. You don't want to have too many water holes. It's just like mock scrapes. Mock scrapes by a stand location, you don't want 10. One determines where a deer will go. If you have a whole bunch, where does he go? Who knows? I don't know. You don't know either. It might pull him away from your stand. So water, you want to have just enough. Eventually you have so much water on the property that the power of one is so diminished they don't go to it. No different than a bunch of mock scrapes. So water holes, if it's a wet property, are the deer bedding dry and going to dry food sources on the way? Meaning that if they're not going over water, even though water might be to the west, but they're moving east when they go to a food source from dry bedding, then you could add a water hole. It doesn't matter if the west third of the property is swamp or there's a creek. We have a spring on our property out here, yet we have water holes all around it. We have water holes all around it. I'm thinking 3, 4 off the top of my head, even though the spring's down in the bottom within 250 to 300 yards of all of those water holes. The deer don't want to go down all the way to that spring and then back up all the way to their movement of food and bedding. Hope that makes sense. It doesn't matter if the water is the wrong opposite way. When you can add water in the right way that's a part of their daily movement, then it's a great place for water hole, and water holes go at stand locations. So water hole and mock scrape within bow shot. That's a movement sweetener. Maybe you're hunting the corner of a field or a hunting plot that goes out to a big plot. Might be a perfect place for a little cluster of apple trees or soft mass, persimmons down south, where you can add that soft mass and it's a high quality food with high quality food, and it's a spot for them to stop on the way out to the big food source. Just a quick stop. So you're looking for things like that to do that sweeten the movement. So we have that. Once we have that, AM, PM stand locations. Now you can look at and say, these are AM stands, these are that deal with bedding area, these are PM. And let's face it, if we can't come up with AM and PM stand locations, at least almost 50-50, maybe 30-40% AM stands, 60-70% PM, could be even more 50-50, then we're doing a very bad job. Because once you have that separation of food and actual cover that force deer to move back and forth within the confines of your border during the daylight, face it, a buck only moves 200 to 300 yards during the daylight all season long except for the rut. So once you encompass that movement, you're going to have morning stands backed by bedding and afternoon stands by food sources. And that's a very good thing. A lot of times for a client, I'll number the stands. Always, I number them. So 40 acres, you might have 8 stands, 9 stands. 100 acres, you might have 12, 14. 400 acres, you might have 17 stands, 21. You have more per acre the smaller the parcel goes. But then we'll go through there because we go over it on a recording. And we'll say, okay, the bedding area by stand number 3 to the southwest, that's where the timber included a high percentage of aspen. I would recommend cutting all the aspen down or removing them by timber harvest and not touching the rest. In this area, we have pole timber, soft maple, and a little bit of a bottom area. This is going to be where they're all 5 to 7 inches in diameter. We're going to pocket cut hinge cuts every 30 to 40 yards, the size of a small garage, and then we'll move on to the next spot, and that's by stand number 7. We always reference those stands in the recording so that the client has that. But bottom line is, we're looking at how can we improve the bedding, how can we improve those travel corridors in those locations, and then making sure that we have that assemblage of stands that offers morning and evening stands. And then finally, screening. Screening is so critical. What should be screened? Everything. We don't want the deer to see you, hear you, or smell you, but certainly see you when you're walking on the property. That means your food plots have to be screened. Your bedding area should be thick enough that they're screened. Water holes. Deer should be safe going to that water hole. You don't want it right out in the open. Always think about this. I stress this over and over again with a water hole. Just to move this, talk about this point. A water hole is a very, very low risk stop and attraction for a mature buck as he's cruising through the timber. He'll hit it at 11 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, middle of the day, because it's very safe and secure to him. A food source, a big open food plot, is the highest risk daily attraction for him. You can train deer that this is a safe spot versus your neighbor's 200 yards away, and they'll hit your food plot 45 minutes before dark, your neighbor's well after dark. It's not a bad thing. It is for your neighbor. But bottom line is, that's still the highest risk spot that they're going to, and they only go to 45 minutes before dark. or they'd be visiting it all day, a mature buck. How often do you have a food plot where the buck's visiting all day? Typically, it's not close to his bedding area. The does and fawns are there, but there's a lot of other complexities to that too, but it doesn't happen. When you take a low-risk water hole and add it to a high-risk food plot, what does it do to the water hole? It raises the risk of the water hole and how a deer is attracted to it and when to that of the level of the food plot. It's not the other way around. It doesn't. You don't add a water hole to the food plot, and now the deer look at it like, wow, that food plot's low risk. I'll go out there because the water hole's there. It's the other way around. That's why you always separate water and food. 50 yards, 100 yards off the food plot, but it's part of that movement sweetener from bedding to food source and back. But even then, that water hole, you want to walk by and just look right over the water hole. Your mock scrapes, everything needs to be screened, including the travel back and forth for deer as well. That's that structure in that web class that we go through with another 10 or dozen videos. We break it down for you, give you a workbook to take notes and try to improve your own parcel. Talk about the 80-20 rule a lot, where there's 20% of the work that'll get you 80% of the work the way on your land. Sometimes some of your tree plantings, fruit plantings, different types of habitat plantings, native grasses, ponds that can be dug. We talk about why those are bad. Even the ponds, look at how much a water hole spreads the HD. We don't talk about in the design class, but just a quick note. The midge from the HD propagates in dry and cracking mud in late summer around water holes. Use a water tank, you don't have the dry, cracking mud around that water hole. Just makes sense. I hope that makes sense to you. But we try to go through a lot of common sense things to make sure that you're steered on the right path to designing your whitetail parcel, and we do it very completely. And we get a lot of really good reviews on the How to Design Your Whitetail Parcel web class, and hope you can check it out, take advantage of that. I know it's expensive, but it's a fraction of the cost of having us out to your property. We'd love to meet you. We'd love to meet everybody. But even if you don't want to buy the web class, you don't want to check that out, we'll keep trying to bring as much of the free information as possible to you so that you can design your own whitetail property without ever spending a dime with us. And that's okay. We just appreciate you watching, following, and even commenting down below. Thank you for being a part of WHS, supporting us, and watching this video to the end. We really appreciate you. Those of you who watch the video to the end, we average about 60% of a video you viewed, but those of you that watch to the end, you guys are the ones that make sure that we can take advantage of and offer you the first light offers, the quiet cat offers, the specials that come along the way. And you're truly the ones that help keep our business running and keep the fuel in the fire for trying to produce as much free content as we can on a weekly basis. Thank you. I appreciate you guys watching the YouTube channel, but I don't know if everyone knows everything that we have to offer, whether it's on whitetailhabitatsolutions.com, our website, or WHS Wildlife Blends, our seed company. Also, Instagram you can check out. I'm very active on Instagram, putting strategies on there, photos of what we do every day. Much more active there than Facebook. But our seed, web classes, books, clients, articles. I have over 600 articles on whitetailhabitatsolutions.com. Everything whitetail strategy. Of course, we have hats on there. And then make sure to check us out on Instagram again. But lots of stuff to offer. We're always coming out with new things. And this isn't the end of it. We have more things coming soon. Make sure to check us out.